supporting us in the movement that we're creating and talking about on our nation, for our people, for our children, for our babies. In this part of the agenda, I really didn't think that it should be leadership talking. I thought this would be the time for the advocates, for the volunteers, for the families to tell their stories. And so that's how, as a group and a collective, I want to frame what we're doing here. And as in any family and gathering, when we come together, there'll be lots of different point of views and people coming into the conversation, like what social workers say, at the point in their life. And so all of us have different experiences when we talk about our Diné relatives, our family members who are no longer in our homes. Whether it was by their choice or whether it was, for the most part of what I want to say is, they're taken against their will. And how do we know that? We know that because we talk to the families. We talk to those individuals who are able to be rescued and come back home. And we shed tears with them. We hear their stories. We know what happened to them. And that's why we're here today. Because the data has erased their story. And that's why we have federal partners, state partners, Navajo Nation partners, where I shouldn't be standing here saying this is happening and believe us, but saying I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, but it's happening. And if I could get everybody in this room to believe that it's happening, then collectively we can work together to address this issue. So I think in terms of the gathering and why we're here in Shiprock is to honor the life and the legacy of Ashley and Mike. And so many know that I wear this scarf not only as my own comfort, because it reminds me of my grandma and her smell, and that was a place where I felt the safest against her skirt and smelling the smoke from the mountain. But I want all of our children and all of our people to have that same comfort, whether it's their own family member, whether it's in their home, but certainly as a nation, we can provide that safe haven for them. We know that Ashton's family, keep them in prayer, because as survivors of violence know, it doesn't end. The judicial system does not always provide justice. And it's the trauma that continues when not only that they have lost a loved one, but then to those children who are praying and hoping that their mother comes back home, their father comes back home, they're missing their Che, they're missing their Nolly woman. And it has happened here, not only in the Shiprock and surrounding communities, but across Navajo Nation. It bleeds into our border towns. And now with the work of awesome individuals telling their story, we know that it's happening in these major urban areas. And so my job here as a leader of Navajo Nation is first to start by believing that it's happening. And with my colleague, Delegate Nathaniel Brown, who I say is that support, my pillar. When we did the work of human trafficking, they told us it wasn't happening on Navajo Nation. FBI told us we don't have one case here on Navajo, and that was just 3 years ago. But we heard the stories and the testimony. We heard the family say, this happened to me. We heard the children in therapy and in treatment say, this is how they touched me. I don't know who that man was who picked me up from school. And trafficking is happening here on Navajo Nation. We're now learning from the stories how trafficking is intersecting with the missing and the murdered. And I'm going to stand here to say, I need our law enforcement in the room. Don't spice and dice this topic. Don't be the individual that says, we're only going to count you in this category. Because you just heard from Shema, it affects all of us. And so we want to know, as a leader, as a Navajo leader, I stand here and tell you, I cannot tell you how many are missing. I rely here on my sister, Misty, volunteer, fierce Navajo mama, to start the Navajo Missing Persons update. If I have a family that comes to me and says my relative is missing, I have no Navajo program that I can refer them to. It's Misty, myself, Jolene, Zoe, Carm. It's all of the planners that make this happen. Nikki, we just don't show up and say we have the solutions. What we do is we come in, and I think the greatest virtue of any leader is to listen. And so I appreciate Representative Allison for being here and the work that you helped with the Amber Alert in Indian Country. I appreciate Shama Shade here from New Mexico State Indian Affairs, who will be next. Shama here giving us those words of wisdom. It's important that we're here at Diné College, at our tribal institution, so that we frame how we are going to approach this issue, grounded in our own teachings, in our own values, learning the songs and how they can protect us, how they can empower us, because for far too long we've looked to the outsiders to do it for us. And the outsiders right now are all perplexed. And so when we traveled to Washington, D.C. and gave that testimony, it was just the tip of the iceberg. Because for all of our colleagues here, all of the friends here, we still know that these families are still suffering with the trauma. We still know that they're living silently and ashamed. And there's very prominent families whose relatives are missing, and they're finally saying, I read your article in the paper. I think this is what happened to my son. I don't know what happened. He would always come back home, but now he hasn't come back home. The city police won't go onto the nation to investigate on some of the clues that we have because of jurisdictional issues. And so these are the barriers that we need all together to stop working in silos, start understanding what approaches, how we develop our data groups. And I think as a nation, we're now saying we want to have control and unlimited access to that information. And that we are going to build trust so that the families will talk to us. Because some families have been re-victimized by our partners, that they said, I don't want you to give the data to the media. I don't want you to give our story to our federal partners. And we know it's because of a trust issue. Something happened where either they didn't get a call back, somebody yelled at them, somebody told them maybe she doesn't want to come home, maybe he doesn't want to come home. And so this is the energy that I want to use to start that conversation. And I appreciate First Lady giving us an update that in August you'll be meeting with our federal partners. But it really is going to start here. And if you look around, I'm hoping that we create this safe space so that the families start being part of that conversation. Because it's from the families that we'll start understanding this dynamic. We'll start understanding what do they need so that we can provide support. Because that child of the missing mother, he's going to a school and we're expecting him to thrive. That daughter of the missing, they're out there searching, and then we expect them to thrive. And so I want to say that's where I feel like we need to center ourselves. I tell myself, take a breath. And be kind to yourself today. Stay hydrated, stay in a state of prayer. This is heavy work, but I know Delegate Brown, myself, and everybody involved, we started this in prayer. And we're talking about it in a way to combat the issues at hand. And there's people who don't want us to talk about this. Because we have to talk about patriarchy, we have to talk powers to the system, and we have to talk about who is accountable at the end of the day. Why as Navajo leadership, we don't know who's missing. And so that's my objective at the end of this discussion. And I see you all as solution, as change makers, as people being either to put it on social media, either to talk to your colleagues, or at least say, how can Navajo Nation continue to lead the charge so that we know that everybody is accounted for our relatives, we're getting them the support that they need. And so I will give the mic back. I always tease as a delegate. If we don't have a timer, we'll just keep talking and we'll say, I wanted to mention this, but I want to listen. I want to hear. I want to come together and be part of the solution. And so I appreciate Shonda here. I really respect her teachings. She always brings in her mom's teaching. And we were talking about the struggle of raising children. And I see it as, even though maybe the partner kind of slipped off, grandma was there. And so that's the true essence of how we come together through our clan teaching.